Okay, I'm Bill Trussheim and Lori Coletti is with me. I'm the president of NJASECD, the New Jersey Alliance for Social, Emotional, and Character Development, and Lori is the vice president of that same group. And what we're going to do today is we want to talk to you about the importance of social emotional learning and character development, and how it impacts the school in shaping the culture and climate, and really being a benefit to both the institution of the school as well as all of the people that are associated with it, be it students, be it staff, be it parents, and be it community. And one of the things that we've found is that in order to do that, it's really helpful to have a framework. And the framework that we use is the 11 principles of character education. So our objectives for today's meeting is to welcome everybody, which I'm doing now, and to talk a little bit about NJASECD, to understand the importance of social, emotional, and character development, to talk about how it impacts school culture and climate, and to talk about some first steps that you might take in changing your school's culture and climate and building SEL competency and character strengths. And the way we do that is to prepare the school to go into a school improvement program using the 11 principles of character education. We're going to talk. Actually, the examples from the New Jersey Schools of Character are the videos that are appearing in between each session throughout the day today. So that's going to, we're not going to actually include those in our presentation, but if you watch during the breaks, you will see how some of the schools in New Jersey have had a really great success following this framework and embedding this in their school culture and climate. So that's essentially what we intend to do today. Lori, you want to say a little bit of something about NJASECD?
Sure. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. NJASECD has been around for a while. It started with Bill and Phil Brown and Maurice Elias and a couple of other people who are very dedicated to social, emotional, and character development. Our mission is on the board there that you can read. We really do believe in trying to get our children to be critical thinkers, to be kind, to reach out, to do work as far as volunteers and to help society. We want to see our children be successful, and the schools that we deal with also want to see their children be successful. So it turns out that NJASECD partners with schools, and it's a really great partnership because we can help one another.
One of the things that we think is important is a process. And one of the things we are going to talk a little bit today as we go through this, and we'll compare this with the framework. And at some point, you'll see where the process that we're talking about fits into this framework. But it's really important for schools to start with the core values. And every school may choose different core values because it's really important that the core values you choose are the expectations you have of your staff and your students and the qualities that you want them to leave with when they graduate from your school. It's important to get input from all sectors of the school community. And it's also important to include a mix of moral, ethical, performance, intellectual, and civic values. And you'll see in a few minutes when we talk about models that there are those 4 different types of character strengths or core values that we think schools should be choosing from. So again, they are unique based on the needs of a school. And that's why you need to get input from all those sectors, because that's where you collect that information. The core values are really, to me, they're integral to the whole concept of character education. And it's one of the things that probably when I think of character education, the first thing I think about is core values. But it's also important because those core values also intersect with the domains of social emotional learning. And it's kind of important, I think, for us to say that our approach and our definition of social emotional learning is a broad one. And if you've been watching any of the stuff that we've been doing today, I know Liz talked extensively about the inclusivity of our definition of social emotional learning in the opening segment. But it's kind of important to be inclusive. And when you're being inclusive, it's important to also consider the importance of common language. Because unless you have a common language, you don't want to be talking about oranges when everybody else is thinking about apples. And so as you imbue these core values into the climate of your school, it's important that everybody knows and understands what you're talking about. Again, these values do represent the expectations that you have for behavior. And one of the things that's really important and that we really recommend to all the schools that we work with is to be sure that your core values are linked to your code of conduct and your discipline practices, because this is one very important place. We all know that consistency and discipline is really important, and it's also one of the areas where when the discipline practices are not consistent, that it's very problematic in the school. So that's an important linkage to make there. And so, making them visible so that everybody knows them, they need to be memorable. And it's important for everybody to know what they are. And hopefully, if you were to walk in a school and ask a student, what are the core values of the school? It would be you would hope that they would know what they were. And that's really important. And again, as I said, there are 4 different kinds of core values that we talk about, particularly in the character ed world. And those 4 are moral ethical. Those include like honesty and integrity, caring and compassion, gratitude and courage. Performance values, self-discipline, responsibility, goal setting, perseverance. Intellectual values, curiosity and carefulness, intellectual autonomy, humility and critical thinking. And civic values, respect and fairness, contributing to the common good, and volunteerism. So these are just, these are short lists, but it gives you the idea of which kinds of character strengths or core values fall into each of these 4 categories. Now, you all probably know a lot about these. These social emotional competencies, come from the Castle Wheel, and the competencies are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. And those are all very important areas of individual and personal development. One of the things that's important to remember about these competencies is that the adults in a school need to master these too. And if you were on Kira's session just a bit ago, it's really important that these skills be modeled. And it's very, very difficult to expect an adult to be able to infuse these skills into instruction if they don't have them themselves. So that's really important. And then once the adults have this skill that they can model and infuse in their own classrooms, when you think about these different things, this is a pretty good description of a positive learning environment. So this is a really important place to start this interconnection. And speaking of interconnections, Dr. Arthur Schwartz, who is the CEO or the president actually of character.org, did a very excellent job of putting together a model. They're called national guidelines, where you see on the left side these skills, these character strengths, and on the right side it's articulated with the domains. Moral character connects to self-awareness, performance character to self-management, intellectual character, interpersonal and relationship skills, civic character to social awareness, and finally, responsible and ethical decision-making are important in both models. So, this is an area that sometimes gets to be confusing. And being able to look at these 2 concepts together is really an important step. And this work, to me, is a very significant piece of research, and it's something that I think is really worth a look. And you can look at that by following the link at the bottom of the screen. The next piece of it is self-assessment and organization, because if you're talking about the needs of a school, you need to assess those. So I'm going to ask Lori to talk about that for a minute.
Hello, everyone, again. Self-assessment and organization sort of goes along with Principle 11, where you're assessing where you are and what's going on in your school and what programs or things, initiatives that you have going. It turns out that most schools have an awful lot going on. And pretty much their school, at the point where they're looking at the 11 principles to organize themselves, they sort of look like the jumbled schoolhouse at the top that Dr. Elias says everybody's doing it, it's just all over the place. So what you need to do is then take a look at all of the pieces that you're working on in your school and then organizing it so it fits together, so that your schoolhouse looks like there's some sort of synergy or organization to what you're doing. So what winds up happening is when you do that, then you can take the 11 principles and say, okay, we're touching on this, we're touching on that, we're touching on the caring community, we have a parent outreach, we have service learning, we're doing core values. What are the things that are going on, and how can we organize them to the best advantage to make our school the best it can be? And that's pretty much what the self-assessment and organization piece looks like. It's taking everything you do and fitting it where it belongs inside the 11 principles, so that you have an organized, unjumbled schoolhouse.
I think one of the points here that Lori is making is that it really is valuable for a school to take the time to sit down and look at what's going on. Because in many schools, there's not a general understanding of everything that's happening and everything that might fall into these different categories. And so spending the time to do that is very valuable, because once you understand where you are, it's a whole lot easier to figure where you want to go. And
one of the bullet, I'm sorry, Bill.
Go ahead.
One of the bullet points in here says identifies gaps in opportunities and underserved students. And I don't know about anybody else, but when we did this for our school, we realized that we were missing a piece. And we found out what we could do to make that piece work. For us in our school, we started a K-Kids program where they worked for outreach outside of the school. And because that was the underserved piece, that was the opportunity we were missing. It added an entire new dimension to what was going on in our school. So when you do that for yourself, you'll see if you need to add something, or maybe you need to reduce something or streamline something. But when you do it, then you get a really good overview of what's going on in your building.
You know, I think one of the things and one of the points that Lori just made about streamlining is a very important thing to think about, because very often we tend to add initiatives on top of other initiatives. And you know, and sometimes schools suffer from implementation overload. And what happens is that, you know, the things that you were trying to implement yesterday are now compromised by the things you now decide to do today. And so I think it's really important to go through this process so that you do streamline it. You know, I think of a comparison to weeding a garden. You know, if you know, sometimes you know, you can't grow everything you might want to grow in a certain plot of land unless you weed out the garden so that there's enough nutrient there for everything to grow. And that I think is a pretty good comparison to what part of this might be. And so this step is really important. Lori, you want to talk about curriculum?
I do. I would love to talk about curriculum. Curriculum is what drives our instruction, right? We have all of our student learning standards. We have all of the mandates from the state. We have the curriculum that the curriculum committees at our district level have given us. And then we have the tools that they give us, the programs that they give us to use to actually teach the curriculum. And part of that is making sure that we include all people, the people who have historically been excluded from curriculum per se because of their race, their gender, their sexuality, or their abilities. So to be totally inclusive, you want to include as many people as you can. You want to create and foster best practices that encourage students to be fully themselves and to encourage them to participate at school. When you have a curriculum that can reach out to every child, the children feel safe to come to school. And because they feel safe to come to school and they feel like they belong and that they're wanted, you have a variety of platforms. You have multiple assessments. You have a lot of things that the children can touch and relate to. So what you build is tolerance while you celebrate differences. You build respect. And what winds up happening is the children are able to really benefit from the curriculum that you have in your school. So by supporting inclusive curriculum, you wind up building all of the really strong foundational pieces that you need for a good SEL or character development journey.
We mentioned culture and climate. I mean, there are really three concepts here that really work in consort. One is character strengths or core values. Two, social emotional skills or competencies. And three, school culture and climate. And they all work in a synergistic way to build a school that is most beneficial to all of its constituencies, whether it's staff, whether it's students, whether it's parents or community. And what we've done here is to kind of listed some of the activities that can be used to build a positive culture and climate. For the staff in service is always important. Professional development. There's always a need for for energizing staff with new ideas. Ed Camp is an idea that's a great idea. It's actually fairly new. PLCs, professional learning communities, are really significant ways to distribute leadership within a school. My middle school, when I was a principal years ago, really thrived on PLCs. And it really changed the way teachers thought about their involvement and connection to the school. Teaching is something where you're always surrounded by people, but you're rather isolated until there's some vehicle to be able to have professional discourse and dialogue. PLCs do that, just as do faculty meetings. Timely topics, common language, using staff experience. One of the things that I found was very effective was allowing staff to showcase things that worked, ideas that worked for their colleagues. And what would happen is that then a colleague would say, that's a pretty interesting idea. And then they would collaborate, and the experienced colleague would help the colleague that was just trying to do it enact that in their classroom. So those are really important things to do. You'll notice that the last bullet point says teacher voice and engagement. We talk a lot about student voice and engagement, and it's my belief that you can't talk about student voice and engagement unless teachers have voice and engagement, because then the discussion about student voice and engagement without the teacher voice and engagement is a very hollow conversation. And so that's really important. Would you like to talk about how this impacts students, Lori?
Yes, please. There are many things that are under this bulleted list. The morning meeting, which is critical to getting to know your students, the character assemblies where the whole school is involved, the think about it forums, which make the children reflect. There's a lot of things here. One of the most important bullets on this list is going from the traditional discipline to mentoring. That is a choice that administration in your building makes. When that administrator, when your principal or your building administration, or maybe your district chooses to go from discipline, traditional discipline, to mentoring, that is a paradigm shift. That takes a lot of effort. That takes the teachers to be on board. That takes your administration to be on board. It takes your nurse to be on board, your guidance counselor, your custodian, your secretaries, your bus driver. It takes everybody to use that common language and to move from discipline to mentoring. It takes a lot of training, but it's training that you give yourself. It's not something that costs money. It's something that you give the effort to do. And when you do that, then you say to the children, were you being respectful? Were you following the core values that our school chose? Were you trustworthy? How are you going to fix this? What would have been a better choice? So you're not just jumping for detentions or suspensions. You're jumping to mentoring. You're saying to them, you made a bad choice. What's a better choice? How can you fix this? What do you need to do? Do they know the steps to giving a meaningful apology? And can they follow through on it? So those expectations of respect and embedding character into your daily lessons and those leadership opportunities that you give your kids all roll into moving from discipline to mentoring. So for the kids, and the younger they start, the better off you are, because then once they learn it in elementary, they can follow through with it in middle school and then again in high school. So it's something that it's a paradigm shift. It's a way of life. It's something different than what we're used to. So it's something to think about. Stakeholders, Bill, do you want to go to stakeholders?
Yeah, I just to keep it short. I mean, these, if you see these lists, and one of the things that when we talk about engagement and involvement, who do we want to have involved? We want to have as many people involved as possible. And the list here for stakeholders are ways that you can get the community, the teachers, the community, and and the parents involved in the school. And when you do these things, that connection is really important, because one of the things that we know is that when the schools and the parents work together, the likelihood of student success is so much greater. And unfortunately today, in so many cases, we see parents and schools being at odds, and a lot of it's political, but that's not good for the kids. And we need to remember that what we do needs to be good for the kids. Laura, you want to just do a real quick recap of what the Schools of Character program is all about?
Sure. The New Jersey State School of Character program embodies 3 different areas. Once you fill out an application and it goes through the process, you might wind up as a School of Character, or you might have a designation as honorable mention, or a designation as emerging School of Character. In any case, New Jersey is there to help you to do whatever you need to do to get your school where you want it to be. Education, character education can and will have a global impact. If you decide to go on the character education journey and infuse SEL and character education into your school, you will see improvement. How much improvement really does depend on how you do it in your school. We are dedicated as Schools of Character to outreach and to helping one another. So if you need help, you can contact us.
Those 3 definitions that
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
So you can take this information as a New Jersey School of Character and do outreach and take it to other schools and help other schools in your district or outside your district to come on board with the idea of improving SEL and character development in your building. Service learning is a very big part of that, and service learning sometimes gets confused with community service. Community service is, you do a little collection or you do something nice for somebody and you give it to them. That's not necessarily service learning. That is community service. Service learning has a lot of pieces to it. There's a research piece, a reflection piece, an action piece. So you would have to take your community service and expand it and make it align with your curriculum. You would have to have your students involved with it. There's a lot to it. And I would encourage anyone who wants to know more about that to come to our conference in May and join a session where they could learn about something like that.
What the next two slides really talk about the specifics of the 11 principles framework, which is called a Cultivating a Culture of Character. There's a link on the bottom of this PowerPoint. Eventually, you will get the copy of this PowerPoint, I believe, and you can actually use these links to access this information. But the 11 principles really are a very comprehensive way to look at a school and to look at improvement possibilities in the school. Principle 1 really has to do with core values. 2 has to do with how character is defined in the school. 3 is the approach that you're taking to develop character in staff and students. 4 is about becoming a caring community. 5 is the opportunity for moral action. That's where the service learning that Lori was just talking about is covered in the 11 principles. 6 has to do with a meaningful and challenging academic curriculum for all. And that's not just the top kids or the neediest kids, it's for every kid. 7 has to do with self-motivation. 8 has to do with the staff members sharing the responsibility, that distributed leadership I was talking about, but being responsible for modeling and advancing ethical character. The character initiative in 9 looks at how it's led, whether it's the principal, and it usually is, as well as a character committee. 10 has to do with engaging not only the family, but the wider community as partners in the character initiative. And principle 10 talks about assessing character education implementation, and not only assessing it, but deciding where it needs to be improved, and then implementing growth for the school and the students in it. So that was a real nickel tour of the 11 principles. But if you go on the website, you can get a pretty good explanation of what all these are about. But as a school goes through this process, this is how they're evaluated and scored, both at the state and national level. So it is a very comprehensive way to look at what happens in a school. Lori, you want to talk about where you could start?
So where do you start? And again, I would say to you, get a group of people together at your school who are interested in this and see how your character education journey would begin and how you would move forward. Start with principle 11 with the assessment, find out what you're doing, then go into Dr. Elias's jumbled schoolhouse and figure out how you can fit it all together to make sense of it, what you need to reduce or reuse or rename, and then create a plan. Share your thoughts with your group, with your teachers, with your stakeholders. Get a couple of the student leader groups together and share your thoughts with them. Have them come together and see how you can move forward.
Thank you, Lori. The conference that Lori mentioned is going to happen on May 23rd. It'll be at Rider University. We actually begin by recognizing the schools every year that become New Jersey and national schools of character. It is an in-person conference for the first time in several years. The registration happens through NJPSA, and you can see on the screen really a flyer about the conference. Our email is njasecd@gmail.com, and we'd be happy to hear from you if you want more information. And again, our website is NJASECD. It's not on here, but it's njasecd.org, and there's plenty of information on there, as well as examples of great things that our schools are doing. if you'd like to volunteer, I didn't say this before, but it is an all volunteer organization. Nobody gets paid. We do this because we think it's important. Many of us are retired, and this is what we felt was important while we were working, and that we still believe is important, and we want to help other schools make these improvements in their school. This QR code that's on the screen connects you to a form. If you would like to get some more information from us specifically, you can use this QR code, and you'll get to a form that you can fill out, and then we'll be back in touch with you with that information. So we really hope that you would consider, you can spend as little or as much time as you want helping out our initiative in New Jersey. We are very proud of it. We have, for the last 5 years, we've had the most schools of character, both state and national, of any state in the nation. And we're very proud of that. And one of the reasons why we do it is we have a very dedicated core of volunteers, and we have schools that are willing to help other schools succeed. And that really is very important. Lori mentioned outreach before when she was talking about the schools of character. Our outreach program is why we have more schools of character than any other state in the nation. So I thank you for attending our session today. I hope you found something of use, something that piqued your interest. And if you want to know more, reach out to us. So thank you very much. And thank you to SEL for New Jersey for sponsoring the session.
Thank you so much for